existence to some degree. The more you write about all the different places that have made your identity, that have made you who you are, in my case, both the United States and Ethiopia, the more you kind of make yourself known you make yourself known to yourself. As I grew older and as I became a writer, I realized I needed to see more of the world and live in other places. And so I was briefly nomadic. I spent a lot of time traveling around Europe and with ideas that I'd go live in Latin America somewhere, and ended up in Paris where I met my wife and family. And so Paris quickly became a new form of home. And all that traveling, I think, was great because it made me realize where home is can be a very flexible thing. It doesn't have to be about a particular place, but the people that you have around you. And so a lot of my friends are in New York, a lot of my family's in DC and in Ethiopia, and all of those places compete for home as well.
Would you say that your writing then interrogates ideas of place? And you say maybe that after 25 years, did you find yourself drawn back to Ethiopia, and did that become more than part of maybe of your writing at that stage?
Very much so. Yeah, and I like that idea that you interrogate spaces a lot, which is I think what a lot of writers do. Even if you're very much committed to one particular landscape, you still understand how complex it is. And so if you might be from one village, one town, and you could spend your entire life writing beautifully about it because there's so much to uncover and so many layers and narratives and stories that need to be sort of unwound from those lives.
I'm fascinated by the idea that you were traveling so much, and then you have these kind of different homes, and that almost through the writing that you've unified them. And are you finding that is coming out in your new novel that you're working on, or is that something different, or is that a secret?
It is. No, well, I think the new one that I'm working on is I have no idea what it is. It's probably the problem with why I'm so nervous about it. But I would definitely say, over the course of the three novels before it, that all three novels were, they're all sort of held together by those same problems, by the same ideas of how do you kind of take these different strands of your life, these different histories, both personal and psychological and emotional, and places that you've been to and have loved. And in my case, like a small town in the Midwest where I came to as a baby, with the stories that my family had in Ethiopia, with places that I've been to as a journalist or as a writer. And so every novel has allowed me to kind of expand that storyline a little bit more and to take on a little bit more of the world.
Do you find that you have to kind of switch brains, or that you have to kind of put on a different hat, the journalism hat or the writerly hat? And do you find that easy to do, or?
I don't do that often. I really do it in between novels because it takes so much time and so much energy and so much emotion out of me to do those stories. And so in the past, oftentimes I've been very happy to go back into those narratives and travel and do those stories, but it does become kind of hard to go back to fiction sometimes. It's also really relieving sometimes to go back to fiction because you have years of quiet and space, and you can imagine, which is a lot different than having to sort of sit and record people's narratives and figure out how to make them meaningful again.
The types of stories that you do, kind of overwhelming, and that they're so complex, and it is in a sense you trying to again maybe put some kind of sense of cohesion onto a story that has cohesion but needs to be packaged, I suppose, and maybe definitely. That's the kind of, I suppose, the challenge of a journalist.
Yeah, without a doubt. Exactly sort of that. You need to both kind of give it the complexity and the context, and at the same time you need to make it accessible. You need to have a way of telling that story so other people will want to read it, and hopefully read it and get something more than just like a sad story or a portrait of war or a portrait of death. You want people to actually walk away with some information, some knowledge that they feel like is meaningful to them. And that's sort of the tricky work. And at the same time, it's sort of like what novelists do as well. But with a novel, you have years to try to figure out how to do that. And you can make things up as you need to in order to fill those empty spaces. With journalism, you have only the stories that you've heard and the stories people have told you, and you have to use that, and you're limited by that, and benefited and gained by that as well.
And did you feel then that having done the journalism that, it kind of supported you, or it gave you a kind of I suppose a support in a sense?
Yeah, I'd say it gave me a greater emotional range. It gave me more landscapes, definitely more places to sort of write about, because I'd seen more of the world, and so I knew more places, and I knew more stories, and I knew more. I had different characters that walked into my life as a journalist that then I could use to inform my fiction. So definitely, and they gave me the sense that you can know the political history or the historical facts about a place, but it's much harder, much more important to figure out the emotional realities, and that's one of the things journalism can give you.
You're obviously reading from your latest novel, and did you find that was an easier novel to write maybe than the one that you're currently working on, or would you like to speak a little bit about that?
It was probably the hardest, I think, because it was longer, and not long in terms of pages. I don't even know longer it took on more than I think my other works had done it. So the novel split evenly between a college campus in Africa, in a time before I was even born, and a small town in the Midwest in the United States, also in a time before I was born, from the point of view of a woman. So it was taking on different narrative challenges that I'd never really tried before. And so it took a lot longer, it took a lot more energy to do. I think I'm much happier with it than I think.
Thank you so much for speaking to us, and welcome to Listowel, and we hope you really enjoy your stay here.
I'm sure it'll be great.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.